So today we're going to be asking, what's the deal with this DACA ruling? Pulled up a number of articles to discuss this. We got the New York Times one here, Fox News, CNN, NPR, and Politico. Now, if you read through the full body of all these articles like I did, you'll realize 90% of it is fluff. A lot of it is misdirection or narrative driven. Can really point you in the wrong direction. You'll spend a lot of time getting either the same information as you read in other sources, or getting misleading information, getting information that ramps you up emotionally rather than just giving you the facts. So I thought the most productive way to address this is figure out what are the actual categories of analysis that are relevant here, and then go through and find that information. So let's go through these. Actually, when you break it down this way, it's not that much. You see, this is the total word count that I copied and pasted from all of these. Yeah, that was just 2 of them that we scrolled through so far. And there's a total of 5 of these articles. So let's hop in. First one, the main one, the obvious one, just what is the legal analysis of the case? How did this judge make this ruling? And how does it incorporate with the history? So, starting out with a quote from Politico. In the decision Friday, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. Hanan adopted one of the same conclusions he came to in the first decision, that the program should have been subjected to formal notice and comment under the Administrative Procedure Act. In the new ruling, the judge also held that the substance of the original DACA program was illegal because it exceeded powers Congress granted to executive branch agencies. So, there were 2 grounds that he did the ruling on. That's really the heart of it. I copied it out of the Politico here, but that's the same. The articles that actually talk about the substance of it, they all agree that's the substance of the ruling. Those 2 issues. Some of them just mention one of the 2. But, so what are those, really quick? The first one, remember, DACA was not a law passed by Congress, and it wasn't exactly a federal regulation. It was, done through the executive branch, done through memorandums, something along the lines of an executive order. But exactly what is an executive order? It's something where he directed the agencies where the president directed the agencies that were part of the executive branch to adopt certain policies to, not deport certain people, etc., etc. So, that process he did it by, according to this judge, was subject to the Administrative Procedure Act, and it should have gone through a notice and comment. It should have allowed the public to be notified and then provide comments on this before it took effect, which did not happen. That's something the judge had noted in an earlier ruling, which he did not put any injunction in effect. It was something where he had said, you can't unscramble the egg, like, yeah, DACA was wrong because of this notice and comment thing, but you can't unscramble the egg, it's already out there, so I'm not going to file an injunction now. And then in this ruling, for whatever reason, he is willing to file the injunction. But, so in this new ruling, he cited that reason, and the second one he cited was that it exceeded the powers Congress granted to the executive branch agencies. And specifically, he was saying that if Congress thought the executive branch had the ability to exempt dreamers from deportation, it very well could have made that, it very well could have written that into law. This is an issue that's been hotly debated in Congress. It's come up for passage numerous times. It's always failed to pass. So the judge took that as meaning that Congress has decided against allowing those dreamers to avoid deportation. And therefore, the executive branch is acting directly against Congress's wishes. And so this is not an area where Congress has not spoken, and the executive branch is just, taking action because there's an absence of any direction from Congress. This is a situation where the executive branch is defying Congress in an area where Congress has jurisdiction. So those were the grounds on which the judge ruled it. And then other relevant procedural stuff here. The suit was brought by a coalition of states led by Texas. So that was from the Fox article. And then this was interesting. Was this ruling expected, or was this unexpected? So let's see how the different articles handled this. Starting out with Politico. Immigrant advocates, attorneys, and DACA recipients had been bracing for Hanan to rule against DACA given the Trump administration's handling of the case and the judge's track record on immigration. So that sounds like it was an expected ruling. They're not outright stating that, but it's leaning in that direction. And then we have CNN. Hanan's shocking Friday afternoon ruling is the latest dramatic twist in a nearly decade-old DACA program. So that's definitely saying that it was an unexpected ruling. And finally, we have the NPR statement on it. The largely expected decision. So there, NPR is saying in no uncertain terms that the decision was expected to come out as it came out. So it's interesting that we have some conflicting viewpoints on that issue. Okay. Next topic of analysis is the legal implications going forward. And this one's pretty simple. Biden's gonna appeal it, and then it's probably gonna go to the Supreme Court. It's in the federal system, so there's only 3 layers. This was a district court, trial court ruling. The next one up is the circuit court. They're going to rule on it one way or another. Whoever loses is going to appeal that to the Supreme Court, and they will likely take the case because this is such a big, important thing, and that's where it's going to end. So, New York Times has the quote, "The Biden administration is expected to appeal the ruling, and unless Congress steps in with a legislative remedy, the ultimate legality of DACA is almost certain to be decided by the Supreme Court." Yeah, I guess they say almost certain because it's possible that the Supreme Court would not take the case. And I guess there's other things that could happen, but that's the most likely situation. And then this is another category of analysis I had. Why was DACA enacted this way in the first place? And it's blank. I didn't see any of the articles talking about this. So on the one hand, on one layer, we know that it was not passed legislatively. It wasn't written into law because Obama didn't have the votes. We know that. He would have preferred it that way, but none of these articles discuss that. Now, on the other hand, this was not if you're going on your own administratively, there's more than one way to do it. There's like executive orders, there's executive memoranda, there's crafting federal regulations to put this policy into place. So there was no discussion of any of that. And it seems like some of those finer points might have impacted this judge's ruling. At least with regard to that first part, with the notice and comment under the Administrative Procedure Act. Right, if it was a federal regulation, would that be subject to the Administrative Procedure Act in the same way that the executive memorandum was? And also, why was it not subject to notice and comment? Is that something that's difficult to do? It seems like it's not like if the public comments, it's not like you have to accept their suggestions. So just facially looking at it, it seems like a pretty easy hurdle to overcome. So why did the Obama administration skip that step? None of that was addressed in any of these articles. I felt like that would have been some relevant context. Alright, next one up here. Trump's attempts to limit DACA. And we got a couple quotes. First one up from the Fox article. Republicans have repeatedly claimed that the program was illegal, and President Donald Trump sought to revoke the program, although that was overturned by the Supreme Court, which found it was done in a manner that was, quote, arbitrary and capricious, while not ruling on the program itself. So, yeah, that was when, Trump had issued some memorandum to shut down DACA, and then he didn't write out his reasons why in a detailed manner. So, that's old news, but it's relevant to the history here. Second one from CNN. After the Supreme Court ruling, the Trump administration then tried to say no new DACA applications would be accepted, and renewals would be limited to 1 year instead of 2, amid an ongoing review. A separate federal judge rejected that and ordered the restoration of the program. So that was a second attempt by the Trump administration to not even rescind DACA, but just to limit it there. And that got stopped. I don't remember the details on that one too well, but it sounds like it didn't even make it up the appellate ladder. It sounds like just the one federal judge stopped it there. Maybe it happened late in the term and the Biden administration chose to not appeal it. Who knows? Either way, that's the history regarding Trump and his attempts to rein in DACA. Next up is, what is the status of these DACA recipients now and going forward? So, from Politico, blocked the Biden administration from approving new applications for the Obama-era Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, but current DACA recipients will remain unaffected for now. So, they're not allowed, the administration is not allowed to approve new DACA applications, but the people who have already been approved are not going to start being deported or in any way affected, at least until this works its way up the appellate ladder. Alright, and finally, political solutions going forward. This is another one that's pretty obvious. Democrats are going to try to pass some law to write DACA into the law. Right? That's pretty obvious. Here's a quote from Politico. Democrats are planning to include immigration measures, such as a pathway to citizenship for Dreamers, recipients of temporary protected status, and essential workers, like farm workers, in the forthcoming $3.5 trillion spending bill. Still, it is unclear if the measures will survive the Senate's budget rules that would allow it to be part of the final package. So that's interesting. Politico adds a little bit more nuance there, where, yeah, of course, they're going to try to write it into law, but it looks like they're trying to pass this as part of the budget, like through budget reconciliation, I think is what they're talking about here, which is where there's no filibuster on that. That's why it's important that they're able to add it to that bill rather than just pass it as a standalone bill. And then what they're talking about here is whether or not budget rules would allow it to be part of that final package. Because budget reconciliation, you're not allowed to just throw in any law you want and then say this is part of the budget, therefore no filibuster. There's, what are they, Senate parliamentarian or something? There's some bureaucrat who works in the Senate who makes these determinations. It's only supposed to be the budget, the spending that goes into this bill that bypasses the filibuster. So stuff that's outside of that is not supposed to be included in that bill. And there's some person who makes the call on that. So that's the end of it. I think when you first hear DACA ruling, whoa, geez, what does that mean? What are the implications of this? It's kind of, you don't know what to think at first. And then if you look at some of these articles, these things read like a novel, and half of it is about these personal anecdotes, and oh my god, who works as a health aide at a hospital. It's about winding you up, and you're not thinking about any of the relevant, this isn't news, reads like a soap opera. So it's much more productive when a big story like this comes out, if you first figure out, okay, what do I need to figure out? Make a list, and then you look at the news sources and you figure that stuff out. Rather than starting with the news sources and letting them tell you what you need to figure out. So, that was an interesting exercise today. If you have any thoughts, let me know if this was productive or not. And otherwise, I'll see you guys next time.